The first day at Glenridge High felt like walking into a storm. The school was old, echoing with stories of rivalries, cliques, and a strict unspoken hierarchy. Emma and Elsie Hartley, white twin sisters with bright blue eyes and calm faces, walked in together, their steps perfectly synchronized as if they shared not only blood but instinct. Their long blonde hair was tied back, their expressions soft, harmless, almost fragile. They looked like the kind of girls who wrote poetry and collected stickers. Students glanced at them and instantly labeled them as the quiet pair. Nobody could have imagined that behind those gentle looks were two black belt karate champions, undefeated in 3 states, trained under a master who believed in discipline, honor, and controlled power. But Glenridge High had its own pair of twins, the notorious Brett and Brandon Miller. Tall, broad-shouldered, arrogant, and feared. The Miller twins were the kind of bullies who didn't need to speak to intimidate, their presence alone was enough to make people avoid eye contact. They walked the halls like kings, pushing lockers closed just as kids reached for them, tossing backpacks, shoving freshmen out of their way. The school had learned to stay silent. Because opposing them meant becoming a target, and nobody wanted that Emma felt their gaze before she saw them. She and Elsie stood at their new lockers when the hallway noise dipped. Brett leaned against the lockers beside them, arms crossed, smirk carved across his face. Brandon cracked his knuckles dramatically, making a show of sizing the girls up. New faces, Brett said slowly, almost tasting the words. You two lost? Or just looking for someone to hold your hand? Elsie stiffened. Emma gently elbowed her, signaling stay calm. They didn't want trouble. Their master always taught them, avoid a fight unless there is no other choice. We're fine, Emma said politely. Just trying to find our class. Brandon laughed. Hear that, Brett? The dolls can talk. Brett stepped closer, too close. This is our hallway. You don't walk in it without permission. Elsie exhaled slowly. This is childish, she thought. Still, they stayed quiet. There was no need to respond. But the twins weren't used to silence. They were used to fear. Brett slapped Emma's locker shut, inches from her face. You think ignoring us is cute? His voice deepened. We don't do cute here. More students gathered at a distance, watching, whispering, too scared to intervene. Emma and Elsie exchanged a single look, the kind of silent communication only twins understood. They were outnumbered. New. They didn't know the school structure well enough. Fighting was pointless. So they walked away. The Miller twins hated that AT lunch, it escalated. Brett knocked Emma's tray from her hands, the crash echoing through the cafeteria. Brandon leaned in and whispered, You're gonna regret coming here. But the girls simply sat down, ignoring them. That infuriated the bullies more than fear ever could. By the final bell, the Miller twins had decided, the new girls needed to be taught a lesson. After school, the girls headed toward the parking lot. It was quiet, too quiet. Emma sensed it immediately. They're here, she whispered. Elsie nodded. I know. The Miller twins stepped out from behind a parked truck, their shadows long under the golden sunset. Brett held a metal bat casually over his shoulder. Brandon twirled a chain around his fist. Now we can talk, Brett said. Nobody to save your little faces now. Emma sighed softly, almost disappointed. We don't want trouble, she said. Walk away. Brandon laughed. Or what? You'll cry? Elsie dropped her backpack. No, she said. We'll defend ourselves. Brett swung the bat. Everything that happened after was a blur, but not for the Hartley twins. For them, time slowed. Years of training carved their instincts sharper than blades. Emma sidestepped the bat so smoothly it looked choreographed, her palm snapping forward, striking Brett in the wrist. The bat clanged onto the pavement. Elsie stepped forward, her foot gliding into a flawless arc, kicking Brandon's chain-wrapped hand. He stumbled back, eyes wide. The twins didn't attack, they neutralized. Fast. Controlled. Precise. Brandon charged. Elsie pivoted, using his momentum against him, flipping him onto the ground. Brett tried grabbing Emma, but she rotated under his arm, sweeping his legs, sending him collapsing onto the asphalt. The bullies were humiliated. Defeated. Shocked, nobody had ever done that to them. Before the girls could walk away, someone shouted from across the lot, students who had witnessed everything. Cameras were out. Voices echoed. The new girls just took down the Miller twins. And for the first time ever, the school cheered, but the Miller twins, embarrassed and burning with fury, vowed revenge, and this time, they wouldn't just threaten, they would strike back, hard, and the Hartley twins knew it, the real war was coming. The next morning was heavier. Whispers floated through the halls like smoke. Students parted as Emma and Elsie walked by, not out of fear, but awe. But they didn't want admiration. They didn't want attention. They wanted peace, however. Peace never comes easily to people who humiliate bullies. The Miller twins arrived late, storming into school with bruised wrists and bandaged knuckles. Their pride had taken the real damage. They glared across the hallway at the Hartley sisters, their eyes filled with something darker than anger, vengeance. They weren't alone this time. They had gathered a small gang of older boys who hung around town, kids who had no problem getting into real trouble. The atmosphere around Glenridge High shifted from tense to dangerous. Still, the girls remained calm. They went to class, took notes, ate lunch quietly. The silence of their composure provoked the bullies more than fighting ever did. By the time classes ended, the Miller twins had a plan: violent, reckless, and stupid. They cornered Emma and Elsie near the gym, blocking every exit. 6 boys against 2 girls. Brett smirked. Round 2, princesses. But the girls weren't intimidated. Not anymore. Elsie stepped forward. We're not fighting you, she said. We're ending this. Brandon scoffed. Yeah? With what? A friendship bracelet? Emma and Elsie dropped into their stance, a stance their master taught them when they were only 6. Balanced. Grounded. Unshakable. Suddenly, the hallway grew silent. Even the boys hesitated. Something about their posture felt professional, not scared. Prepared. Brandon lunged first. Mistake. Elsie intercepted, blocked, and countered with a palm strike to his chest, not enough to injure, just enough to knock the wind out of him. Brett's gang charged all at once. Emma whirled like controlled lightning, kicking, redirecting, sweeping feet with flawless precision. Elsie moved like water, flowing between attackers, every motion deliberate. It wasn't a fight. It was an outclassing. Students gathered again, watching history unfold. Phones recorded. Gasps echoed with every perfectly executed strike. Within 20 seconds, all 6 boys were on the floor groaning. Brett and Brandon stood alone, shocked and trembling. The Hartley twins stepped toward them. Emma's voice was calm. Violence doesn't make you strong, Elsie added, but knowing when to stop does. They turned around and walked away, not in victory, but in discipline. The Miller twins looked at each other, ashamed, and strangely humbled, and for the first time since they came to Glenridge High, the Hartley twins